Sorry. Every time he closed his eyes, Ghost would see Merc with a belt buckle over his fist. Terror would make him hiss and open them. Then he'd realize where he was, semi-conscious in the cold woods, next to a guy he didn't know, not knowing where the next strike was coming from, who to set as his target. It was the most unsettling thing. He tried to put himself mentally into a familiar place, a fight, a raid, but he'd sink into one horror after another of memories instead. He'd closed his eyes to open them in his mind, seeing the concrete floor diving into his chest. That was when the bad shit always started. Here, Kiraba was in front of him, kneeling and holding out a saltine with red sauce on it. It smelled like roses and salt. Its jam on top. Ghost got onto his left elbow and sat up slowly, shivering. It was so cold. He scooted over to the tree he'd fallen onto and sat up against it. Kiraba tried to offer an arm, but backed off when Ghost didn't take it. He took the cracker and kept eating and drinking whatever Kiraba gave him. His mind cleared a bit. His head ached less. He smiled. It was getting dark, but Kiraba saw and smiled back eagerly. Feeling better? He asked excitedly. Ghost nodded. Peace and comfort meant bad thoughts. Merc yelling at him to stand up. Yelling, "Yes, sir," till his throat was raw. Sweating the whole time because Merc might decide it wasn't good enough. Getting comfortable wasn't good for Merc's image. Ghost shook his head, shivering. Kiraba said nothing for a bit, but he was visibly suppressing words. Ghost stared at him. "What?" he asked finally. Kiraba shook his head. "You didn't answer me before." He'd sat down nearby and started cleaning his knife. "But dude, why were you face planted in the woods, like, away from the other shivers? Why'd you fight them?" "They don't like me," Ghost said. He huddled up under his clothes. It was cold. "Why not?" "Because I tried to leave. Because of my dad." "I thought you said you weren't running from him?" Kiraba said. Ghost lowered his head. "Well, no," he said. "I killed him." He looked at Kiraba, but it was a bit too dark to tell what kind of face he was making. The silence was pretty clear, though. "I'm sorry," Kiraba said finally. "Think I'm a psycho killer now?" "No, I don't think you're psycho." The silence was amplified by the stinging chill at the toes and fingers. Even though he'd tucked his hands in his pockets, his feet were still just wrapped in cloths instead of shoes. Ghost looked up at Kiraba. I don't know why you're doing this, but I have nothing to give back," Ghost said. Kiraba looked up sharply. Ghost clenched his jaw, waiting for something bad. At least it wasn't a memory this time. Kiraba didn't say anything. Ghost pursed his lips, then said, "I'm not going to fight for your gang. I'm not going back to Shiver and whatever other twisted fuckery." Kiraba frowned at him. He looked back down at the knife, then sighed. He bared his teeth at Ghost in an odd grimace. I'm having a hard time with that," he said. He seemed angry. You can't comprehend human decency?" Ghost set his teeth. This was the part where he'd need that knife, and this yellow cap had taken it. Kiraba shook his head and frowned, breathing out hard. "I don't want anything back." He glared at Ghost. Ghost lowered his eyes, heart beating harder as he instinctively prepared to defend himself. He might not win a fight right now. He hadn't meant to start one. "Sorry," he said. He had to clear his throat to say it loud enough, and when he looked up the second time, he saw Kiraba turning to leave. He released his breath. Being abandoned was better than being attacked, at least. He didn't want to burden Kiraba anyway. "Bye," Ghost said. Kiraba turned back, frowning and with teary eyes, then turned away again. "I'll be right back," he said, then headed out into the dark. Kiraba was not right back. Ghost knew he'd been abandoned to freeze. He picked up the knife and the bloody cloth. The blood on his clothes had stiffened, partly dried, partly frozen. He sat back down, clutching the knife in his numb hands and shuddering because of how cold he was. If he stabbed himself, he could still control how he died. But it was too late. His fingers were too stiff right now. He'd cause more pain and die very slowly. He was right in here. He perked up at Kiraba's voice. Everything looked so different in the dark. Ghost opened his eyes wider and listened. They were talking anxiously about whether he would freeze. He squeezed his eyes shut. They were going to kidnap him. But he didn't care. All he wanted was to be warm. "Yellow caps," he called, managing to force out a real voice at least. "I'm right here." They hurried to him, shining a penlight on him. Trite leaned down and touched his face. Ghost clenched his jaw and shivered. "He's still alive at least." "Look, the shiver's shivering," someone said. "Cut it out, Grime," Kiraba said. Trite frowned at Ghost, noticing his freezing red ears and nose. "Get that blanket on him," he gestured at Kiraba, who was already hurrying over with a big wool blanket, an old-world one, not felted. "Hold on," Trite added. "Ghost, do you mind if I carry you back to camp? We have a cabin with a stove really close." He must mean that Beaver Dam Fort thing. "I can put you on my back and share my body heat." Ghost nodded. There was a grapple that reminded him of uncomfortably. Should be warm, though. Trite got down in front of him, and Ghost looped his arms over his shoulders and tried to grab on somehow as Trite stood up with a grunt. Kiraba threw the blanket over Ghost's back. "Never been carried on someone's back before, huh?" Trite asked, hiking his arms under Ghost's legs. The knife in Ghost's pocket pressed the cold flat against his thigh through the material, comfortingly. "You have to lean over my shoulder and grab your elbows." Trite shifted Ghost to keep him from slipping off anymore. Ghost tried to link his arms like Trite said. He turned his head out and watched the others as they walked through the woods back to the cabin. Ghost huddled on a cot wrapped in the blanket, in almost the same spot as before. The other yellowcaps didn't seem very bothered by him. Warmth crept up, starting at his heart. It had slowed achingly, but now it beat faster and harder. His fingertips and toes ached like crazy when they got warm. His shivers turned into violent, painful shudders, and then all at once, he managed to stop altogether. The prickly warmth had completely filled him, and the shivers reduced to a spasm every couple minutes. He fell asleep fast.